Hey guys, it's Emmanuel Morel with Bothersome Truth. So several weeks ago, Bothersome Truth reported briefly on a story about a 19-year-old Dylan Noble who was shot and killed by police during a traffic stop after exiting his vehicle. The adolescent teen was unarmed, and we reported on it because we thought it was important and because All Lives Matter wasn't reporting on it. So before I begin talking about this story, in this body cam video that was released, I want to recognize two things just briefly. First, the absence of the All Lives Matter support and the distinguishable differences between the way the media covers this story contrary to the way media covers the murders of unarmed black people in similar conditions. All Lives Matter is not by any means a genuine protest group devoted to highlighting the existing abuses by the police state and by police departments. Their intent is to do nothing more than discredit and to silence people who are genuinely disturbed by the abuse of the police state. They're genuinely disturbed by the lack of accountability in police departments across the nation. That would be Black Lives Matter. And Black Lives Matter is of course composed of black people, white people, Latin people, all kinds of people. The reason why Black Lives Matter generated so much activity was because black children were being killed, and we wanted to stop and say Black Lives Matter too. Like if the organization only thought about only Black Lives Mattering, then it would be called Only Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter has never been an organization that is mutually exclusive with the notion that all lives matter. Black Lives Matter has never been exclusive to any other life mattering. In fact, Black Lives Matter accentuates the beauty and appreciation of all. Let's take a look at the video released by the police officer wielding the shotgun, believed to be the lead cause of death of Dylan Noble. So let's take a look at that.
Let me see both of your hands. Let me see your hands. Get both of your hands out. Subject keeps reaching for his waistband. Lay down on the ground. Lay down. On the ground. There's no police department. Get down on the ground. Let me know. Get your fucking ass on the ground! Stop! There's no police department! Drop whatever you have in your hand! Drop! Go forward, you're gonna get shot, man! Get down on the ground now!
So that's gruesome. So what did we see in the video? We saw Dylan exit the vehicle without being prompted by the Fresno police officers. He failed to respond to the police commands to get on the ground. The police didn't prompt him to leave the vehicle to begin with, but when he did leave the vehicle, he failed to respond to the commands to get on the ground or raise both hands. He also approached the police while gesturing with one hand towards his backside, almost as if he was, I guess, trying to give them the impression that he may have had a firearm or something on him. It was later discovered that he did have something in his hands. It was some piece of plastic or something. But the FBI is still investigating what that object was. Finally, you hear, but what really isn't being reported on that much is you hear something from Dylan. It sounds a lot like he doesn't give a fuck, and he hates his life. He doesn't give a fuck about his life, or he hates his life. Something to that degree. And of course, the first thing that I think of when I'm watching this is, oh man, he may have been trying to commit suicide. So, suicide by cop is a very real thing. It's a very real experience for police officers. Often, when a person wants to commit suicide, they don't do so themselves, so they can rely upon police officers and their anxiety in given situations to help end their lives. And so there's a lot of irony in that. For one, the fact that people almost instinctively know that they can go to police officers to end their lives, right? But police officers are supposed to protect us. And The other thing is there's statistics to support that. Health research funding says almost all suicide by cops are white males, over 90%. Secondly, they most often carry weapons with them, such as guns, but only 1 in 2 if the weapons are loaded at the time of the incident. Around 17% actually use fake weapons, and that may have been the case with Dylan Noble. Nearly the same amount attempted suicide by cop due to something involving their children. Quite a few of these individuals have a history of substance abuse, domestic violence, or had attempted suicide before. So we don't know yet whether or not he's had a history. Another study published by the Journal of Forensic Studies in 2009, which looks more closely at the 700 shootings throughout North America since 2009, determined that 36% of them were suicide. That's all of North America, not necessarily only in the United States of America. While additional 5% feature subjects who were suicidal during the encounter. So my question to this is, why aren't police outfitted with rubber bullets instead of lethal rounds while they're doing their patrols? Less than lethal force does still carry the same possibility of lethal force in an interaction with the police, and at the very least decreases the likelihood of that person dying as a consequence of being fired upon by the police. And it also puts the police officer in the privileged position to be able to choose between lethal force and less than lethal force. I mean, wouldn't you as a police officer want to have the opportunity to be able to, in a situation of a suicide by cop, to be able to choose non-lethal or less than lethal force? Which is why we have tasers, which is why we have pepper spray. And if you look at the video, it does look like he's in enough proximity to be able to use one of those options, but it just appears that the officer didn't have that option available to him. So does this mean that the police force will be completely disarmed? Absolutely not. In fact, now they'll be liberated with the alternative of choosing between less than lethal force and lethal force. They'll have the capacity to make a better judgment call pertaining to how to use force appropriately given the situation. So if we do have a case of a potential suicide by cop, or even a case of someone who just gives you anxiety because of their behavior or their mood or whatever the case may be, you have a genuine alternative instead of just taking someone's life and regretting it later. That's one of 2 solutions that we could use right now in order to sort of get people in the direction of having less police fatality. So here are my 2 solutions in this situation. Police need to have rubber bullets instead of lethal rounds as an alternative when they're conducting their routine police patrols. Secondly, they need to be able to be used and prioritized in a way that's efficacious. We don't need police officers patrolling the streets looking for people who are committing traffic violations. What ends up happening is we're giving more power and authority to the police state, and as a consequence, they are obligated to pursue matters that authority dictates. For instance, they're obligated to then hail people down whenever they witness a traffic violation, which puts them in a compromising position, doesn't it? It puts them in a position to where they have a 70, 30, 50, 50, who knows how many percentage chance of being harmed themselves, or at least ostensibly being harmed themselves when they approach that vehicle. Every time they approach a new vehicle, they don't know what kind of an interaction they're going to have with that driver. And that's because we put them in a position that they have to enforce these policies that, quite honestly, we can just enforce ourselves as a society, as human beings, right? Do we actually need someone enforcing these traffic light stops, right? When we can instead have drones, we can have cameras outfitted on the traffic lights themselves, so if a violation is committed, the photograph is taken of the vehicle as well as the license plate, and then you'll get your citation in the mail, and that completely removes the police element from enforcing that law, right? Or even in some cases, do we actually need speed limits the way that we have them on our highways for highway patrol, for instance? Do we actually need an authoritative body or a state police outfitted with militaristic weaponry to approach vehicles because they go 5 or 10 miles over the speed limit, or 15 miles over the speed limit, because they drive comfortably. I know that in Georgia, there are plenty of places to where you won't even realize how fast you're going. You won't even realize that you're speeding because you can comfortably go a good 20, 25 miles over the speed limit without feeling as though you're putting yourself or anyone else at risk. So I think that those are areas of which, as a society, we need to revisit what we consider to be a risk to society overall that obligates a police force or the police state to intervene or to enforce. And then, of course, we need to revisit how we outfit these police officers too, because there's no reason why a police officer conducting a routine patrol needs to have, rounds of ammunition that have the potential to kill people, when they can instead have rubber bullets as an alternative. They can still keep the rounds of ammunition that can kill people in their base if they just want to feel that much more comfortable. But they don't. I just don't feel like that's something that they need walking around with, right? So those are my 2 cents on this entire situation. This is a terrible tragedy, what happened to this kid, and these things will keep happening unless we do something, unless we make drastic change. And that's the bothersome truth. Emmanuel Moreau.